He came to scatter his son's ashes, not face down a wild panther. But when two poachers stepped out of the shadows, his old retriever did something no one could explain. What happened next silenced the jungle. You don't wake up one day at 56 and say, "Hey, let's fly halfway across the world and walk straight into Panther country with a dog old enough to remember cassette tapes." But guess what? I did. Not for thrills, not for the bucket list. I came to say goodbye. See, 3 years ago, my boy, Jason, didn't come back from this jungle. Volunteer wildlife biologist, big heart, bigger dreams. Officially? Animal accident. Unofficially. We don't really know what happened, sir. That was the report. A sentence with no bones in it, and I couldn't bury that kind of silence. So I came, with Benji. Benji's not just any dog, he's Jason's. Golden retriever, grumpy like a retired mechanic, but loyal to the bone. Ever since my son left, Benji stopped wagging. He'd sit by the door every night like a soldier who missed the war. So, yeah, we flew to Brazil, we stepped into the forest, and I brought Jason's ashes with me, tucked inside an old canteen. Poetic. Maybe. Dumb. Almost certainly. The air in Madeira Reserve is thick, like it's hiding something. Every sound is louder than it should be. Every tree feels like it's listening. And me? I'm trudging along like some wrinkled Indiana Jones thinking, "This is stupid. You're going to twist your hip or step in a nest of jungle ants and end up on some viral video titled Boomer Gets Bitten." But then I heard it. Not a roar, not a scream, a whimper, soft, rhythmic, hurt. I looked down and saw the worst kind of thing. A capybara pup, its leg caught in a steel trap, bleeding. Blood mixing with mud, flies swarming. It looked at me like it knew I didn't belong there, but still begged me to help. Who the hell lays traps in a protected reserve? I dropped to my knees, ignoring how badly my back complained, and reached for the rusty clamp. "Easy there, little guy. I've wrestled worse. Once unclogged a hotel sink in Tampa with a butter knife." Benji stood guard, ears back, growling low. That was strange. He usually only growled at vacuum cleaners and delivery men. As I opened the trap, carefully like a man diffusing his third divorce, the pup let out a tiny sigh. I poured water from my bottle, ripped a piece from my shirt, yes, the only clean one I had, and wrapped the wound. Maybe I was no vet, but I knew pain when I saw it, and that's when I felt it. A shift in the air, like the trees had leaned in closer, like the whole jungle went silent, just to let something else speak. Benji growled again. This time, deeper. He wasn't bluffing. Behind us, the leaves moved. Not rustled, moved. Quiet, heavy, focused. And there she was, a black panther, not in a cage, not in a zoo, in the flesh. And she looked like she owned the world, because maybe she did. Eyes like polished amber, muscles smooth as a river current. She was a shadow with claws. No warning, no noise, just presence. I froze. Benji stepped between us, hackles raised. My loyal old mutt, half-blind, stiff-kneed, standing between me and this midnight monster like it was his life's purpose. And then she moved. Not fast, not slow, but deadly certain. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss what came after, because when the system breaks down, even a dog can rewrite the rules. You ever stare down a wild animal and realize you might be dessert? Not just any animal, a panther, glossy as midnight oil, shoulders twitching, paws as silent as regret. And she was locked onto me like I owed her money. Benji didn't flinch. Now let me say this. Benji was no superhero. He hated sprinklers, barked at his own reflection, and once got spooked by a possum statue. But in that moment, he stood like a marble lion at a war memorial. She took another step, her head low, tail flicking. Classic predator math. Size up the prey, get close, strike clean. I didn't move. Partly from fear, mostly from the voice in my head shouting, "Don't run! You're not faster, you're not smarter, and you're definitely not stronger." My hands were still on the capybara pup, now shivering like a leaf. I wanted to whisper something to it. Comfort, apology, maybe a final blessing. But I couldn't peel my eyes off that panther. Then it happened. Benji growled again. Deeper this time. Not the decorative kind you get when he spots a squirrel. This one had gravel, history. It sounded like, "Not today." And somehow, she hesitated. I kid you not. She stopped mid-step. Her paw hung in the air for just a beat longer than nature designed. Her ears shifted. Something behind her eyes clicked. She looked at Benji, then at me, then the pup, and then, like some weird jungle arbitration, she let out the softest grunt I've ever heard from anything with teeth that size, and backed off. I blinked. Wait. What? But she wasn't leaving. No, ma'am, she just circled, slow, wide, watching. It felt less like she was retreating and more like she was giving me a test. So I scooped up the pup, carefully, gently, wrapped tight in my arms and started walking. No sudden moves, no heavy breathing, just steady, purposeful steps. Like I'd done this before, like I belonged there. Spoiler, I didn't. Benji walked beside me, head low, ears up, keeping half an eye on her, half on me. And the panther? She followed. Yeah, you read that right. She didn't pounce, didn't vanish, just followed. I didn't know if she was escorting us or sizing us up for later, but every time I glanced back, she was there. 20 feet, 10, sometimes 5. And then we saw the reason. About 50 yards ahead, just off the path, 2 men in camo stood next to a stack of cages. Big ones, rusted. And guess what was inside? Another capybara, adult, bloody and wide-eyed, poachers. They didn't see us yet. One was drinking from a dented thermos. The other fiddled with a map like he was deciding which crime to commit next. I stopped. My chest tightened. Not from fear, from rage. This wasn't random. This wasn't some freak accident in the wild. This was human-made cruelty, packaged and sold by men who saw life as a business opportunity. Benji sat, still, quiet, watching. The panther did too. And then it hit me. She wasn't here for us. She was tracking them. Benji growled low. Not at the men, at me, as if to say, "Do something." I could have walked away. Said it wasn't my fight. Carried the pup and left justice to fate. But sometimes, fate needs a little push. This is the turning point. What happens next will flip everything on its head. And no, you absolutely don't want to miss it. I didn't plan to be a witness to a crime scene deep in the jungle. I also didn't plan for a panther to become my unexpected backup. But hey, life gets creative when you think it's done surprising you. So there we were. Me, holding an injured baby capybara like a retiree at a wildlife rehab center. A panther circling behind me like an avenging spirit. And Benji, good old Benji, sitting so still he looked carved from stone. But his eyes? Laser-focused on those 2 men in camo with enough traps to bankrupt Noah's Ark. I crouched behind a mossy log. The air felt like soup. Sweat poured into my eyes, but I didn't blink. The poachers were close now, maybe 30 feet. One of them had a rifle slung casually across his shoulder like it was just another Tuesday chore. They weren't worried. That's the thing that hit me. They were comfortable, like they'd done this before, like no one ever questioned why wildlife went missing. Benji made the first move. He stood up, ears perked, and let out a sharp, clean bark. Loud, sharp, commanding. The men froze. One dropped the thermos. The other jerked around so fast he knocked over a crate. Now you'd expect a dog to charge or bark again. But not Benji. He walked, not ran. Walked, steady, right into the clearing. No growling, no teeth, just calm, deliberate steps. His tail was low. His gaze, direct and unshaken. And somehow, that scared the men more than if he'd lunged. "What the?" "Is that a retriever?" one of them muttered, stepping back. Yeah, a retriever. Gray around the face, wearing a faded collar, strolling into a crime scene like he had a badge. The second guy raised his rifle. He didn't aim it, not yet, but that was enough. That's when the forest exploded. The panther leapt. I don't have the words. She didn't jump. She unleashed, like gravity begged her to stay, and she refused. A blur of muscle and fury hit the rifleman square in the chest. No sound but a thud and the crash of bodies hitting the dirt. The other guy screamed, froze, then made the brilliant decision to run. Benji chased him. Now picture this, a golden retriever, old enough to qualify for senior discounts, hauling through the underbrush after a full-grown man in camouflage like he was chasing the mailman from hell. I followed, barely keeping up. The poacher tripped, hit a root, went face first into a tangle of vines. Benji stopped just short of him. Didn't bite, didn't bark, just stood over him, growling low. No rage, just judgment. Back in the clearing, the rifle was on the ground, snapped in half. The panther stood over the first man. She didn't maul him, just kept him pinned, watching. Eventually, backup came. Turns out a nearby ranger team heard my emergency beacon. I'd hit it earlier out of habit, not hope. They arrived, guns drawn, expecting chaos. They found order. One poacher on his back, wet himself. The other curled up, too scared to breathe, and a wild panther sitting calmly like she had planned the whole intervention. The Rangers didn't even know where to start. I told them what happened. I don't think they believed me. Not entirely. But when they opened that second cage and saw the adult capybara limp but alive, they stopped asking. As for the baby I carried, the vet said he'd recover. Some limp maybe, but alive. Benji? He got a steak that night, cooked, rare, and a full-page spread in 3 local papers titled Retired Dog and Wild Panther Foil Poaching Operation. I didn't stay long after that. Said goodbye to the jungle. Left Jason's ashes under the tree where I found the pup. Quiet. Simple. Right. On the flight home, a woman beside me asked if I'd had a nice vacation. I looked at Benji curled up at my feet, snoring like a jet engine, and smiled. It wasn't a vacation, I said. It was justice.